thing I didn't have on my bingo card was Andrew Tate destroying Piers Morgan in a live interview. Like, who would have predicted at the beginning of this year? Like, you just don't know what's going to happen throughout the rest of the year, do you? New Year's rolled around. God, it was wild.
I kind of love it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there is the, the sort of Joker-esque aspect of chaos. It's like, well, we're going to have lockdowns. Who knows? It could be any crazy thing. Like, I mean, literally, you don't know. Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter. Okay, well, mad, So, like I said, Andrew Tate, and I didn't know who Andrew Tate was before he got deplatformed, really. I'd heard the name, but I'd never watched anything by him. He just seemed like just some internet shock jock. So, who cares, right? But then he got massively deplatformed. And so Piers Morgan was like, I'm going to talk to this man because my show is called Piers Morgan, uncancelled, by Piers Morgan, with Piers Morgan on every other piece of
surface
and every other
building,
yes, and then projected onto the ceiling.
And in fact, there are adverts in every town with Piers Morgan
yes.
written on them.
Yes, and so this I think ties in well with recent Contemplations that Josh did, talking about human consciousness, which Piers Morgan doesn't seem to demonstrate, because if you, I mean, I love the description as well. The nature of consciousness itself is like, Piers, I might send you this. Like you are such a backwards person that you are trapped in just this weird, like, he's trying to occupy every single political position at once, and it makes him look like he just doesn't think. So if you want to pause, let's go and watch that, because that's really good. But let's go on to the actual clip, right? So they put this clip up yesterday. Now, the entire interview hasn't been released yet, so I don't know whether Piers Morgan does perform. Piers Morgan. Yeah,
I can see 4 or 5 Piers Morgans. There's a Piers Morgan on the roof there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 5. And
we don't know. It's a game you can play with his show.
When the banner comes up, you'll see at least 2 more
Yeah.
Piers Morgans as well. It's just remarkable, absolutely remarkable how much one man's name can be displayed on the screen. But so this we haven't seen the full thing. It hasn't been released yet. But it's remarkable. This is what they decided to clip together and put out. Right. So I thought we'd go through it. So this is Piers saying, "Look, I'm talking to known misogynist Andrew Tate. He's a really terrible guy, and this is how he describes how he's a terrible guy."
Andrew Tate's the most famous man you've probably never heard of, but the chances are your children will have. Videos of Tate have been viewed billions of times online. He's built an enormous following of mostly young men, and his often scandalous views about women that have made him notorious across the world. Views like this.
So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes. When a bride is walking down the aisle to marry the groom, the father walks next to her and gives her away. True or false?
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, who did the research for this segment? Like, for all of the...
An Andrew Tate fan?
that's like, you had... How much manpower do you guys have? Because you guys have loads of money. You're talking
millions and millions of pounds.
And you could have looked over the internet. I mean, endless hours of content of him slipping up or saying stupid stuff. That's the reason I'm not a huge fan of him. And you went with that.
Yeah.
You went with the reality, which is that, the father gives away his daughter at a wedding.
That's one of the reasons that the daughter takes the husband's name.
And he's like, look at this. Ooh.
Yeah.
As if no one in this country has ever got married, so they don't know.
As if women aren't aware, that's why they want it. But also, like, all relationships contain some form of property element. My father, my mother, my girlfriend, my daughter, my car.
My woman.
Exactly. You have a relationship with someone, you have some claim of ownership over it. So, yeah. Like, there is a kind of property dimension to the ownership, and like, it's not like the woman's like, yeah, well, someone's husband. No, my husband.
That's my man.
Yeah, exactly. You have ownership over the husband. So it's like, look, Piers, that's just not like the dramatic own that you think you've got there. But okay, so let's get into it. Let's go, Piers.
Do you respect women?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
Do you think that 18, 19-year-old women are more attractive than 25-year-old women?
I think there's attractive people. That's a loaded question. I don't know.
Well, it's not really, is it?
I can't.
You know why I'm asking it?
Of course I do, but I can't sit here and
for
say.
the benefit of viewers who don't know why I'm asking, you said this. In general, this is also one of the reasons men find youth attractive. You want to blow up the internet? I'll blow up the internet right effing now. The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. People say, oh, you can't say that, but yes, I can. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been effed and dumped more times, more arguments, more mess, more for me to clean up.
Is he wrong?
I don't... I mean, he's putting it very crudely, but
Yeah.
there's less baggage with someone who's younger and has had less partners.
Yes, and it turns out that men have a preference to marry women who have not been had by every other man in the town. And this,
But even if it's just like, oh, people who are 25 on average have had like one more or something like that, right? He's still correct. It's not necessarily even about whores.
but
it's
in
just
the,
what
in
his
the
male
sort
preference
of
is.
modern era that we're talking about, this is actually a critique of the sort of promiscuous feminist culture in which we live and how it's actually doing women a disservice, right? Because what Tate's saying here is that, look, if by 25 you have had 24 partners, then any other woman who's slightly younger than you becomes more attractive than you. And the thing is, it's like a 25-year-old...
It's not judgment. That's a reality of how does this play out.
Exactly. And the thing is, it also logically follows then that a 25-year-old who has only had one or two partners is more desirable than a 19-year-old who has had 20 partners or something, right? So it is actually a critique of promiscuity from the position of a man who is looking for a high-value woman, which of course is his entire brand. Now, like you say, he's framing it in a vulgar way, but okay, well, internet shock jock, who cares? It's still not wrong, and it's not women are bad. This is a critique of behaviour of certain kinds of women compared to others.
And the lie that is being told that you can F a million people and it'll have no impact. It's like,
and
no, it
then
does.
you'll find Mr. Right settle down and have a nice house with a family and a bunch of kids and a dog. It's like that's not going to happen. Actually, once you've gone through that many encounters, you become an unappealing prospect, and for a lot of men, it's true. And so Piers Morgan, getting his panties in a bunch about this, replies with this.
That is misogyny.
Why?
Because you are encouraging a mindset about 25-year-old women that makes them sound out to be infinitely less desirable than 18, 19-year-olds and having effectively been having too much sex to be taken in a more respectful way.
Yeah.
That's not misogyny, Piers.
No, there's no misogyny here.
That's
This is why watching this interview, I'm not a big fan of Andrew Tate, I mentioned previously, but he looks so good out of this because of how dumb Piers Morgan is.
Yeah.
But you can see the dumbfoundness on Tate's face as he just looks at him going, what?
that's not. Yeah, I mean, the good quote, why? And Piers has then got to explain in a really fumbling
But
way.
he doesn't know why, because it doesn't make sense.
You're saying that a woman who sleeps with 30 guys is less attractive than a woman who's only had one or two partners or is a virgin. That's hatred towards women. It's like, is it? I don't think it is, actually, Piers, you moron. As in, the thing is, what Piers is saying here, right, is that we have to value the whore as much as we value the Madonna, right? This is the most radical feminist position. This is the eternal, the final form of the feminist position is that nothing a woman can choose to do is ever wrong, right? Because all of this is completely within a woman's power, right? These are not things that are intrinsic to women. It's not intrinsic to womanhood to debauch yourself by having 30 partners by 25, right? That's not something women have to do. It's not something women have always done. It's a product of the sort of, debased modern culture in which we live, right? A woman has control over this.
Yeah, that there's something in that, though, that makes me feel like they're fallen and they're dragging everyone over a woman down. You're like, you're not a real woman until you've done 30 guys like me.
There probably are women who think that. And also, it's not misogyny to critique an individual woman either. Because he's going, well, this woman and that woman. It's like, but I can't commit a misogyny by critiquing that woman without critiquing that woman. Right? Misogyny is critiquing all women all the time. So it doesn't make any sense.
I suppose we'll get to that.
Well, we will get to that, in fact, in this clip.
Well, firstly, even if that was the case, that wouldn't be misogyny.
Well, what did you mean by what you said?
That's not misogyny because it's not anti-women. I'm saying that an 18 or a 19-year-old woman would be more desirable.
Pretty anti-25-year-old woman.
Anti-25-year-old women we can argue, but not misogyny.
Well, that's misogyny then, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Well, being anti any woman at all is misogyny.
The final phase of feminism.
This is what I mean. Piers Morgan is so dead-brained.
Yeah.
Just he could be interviewing Hitler, and Hitler would look good out of it because it's just
But
you're a moron.
Let's
You're an
explore
actual
that
moron.
statement. Being anti any woman at all is misogyny. That is incredible. So in Piers
Imagine
Morgan's...
saying that.
Well, I can't. It's so ridiculous. But I never thought... Again, just on my bingo card, it wasn't there. Piers Morgan, no woman can ever do anything wrong.
Ever.
In all of history. And I just thought we'd give you a few examples of women who also did nothing wrong. My favourite, I think,
Not
is...
according to us.
according to Piers. My favourite is Elizabeth Bathory, actually. if you think that Elizabeth Bathory torturing hundreds of girls and women between 1590 and 1610 in, it wasn't Transylvania, it was somewhere near there, then you're a misogynist, being anti any woman at all. She's said to have begun killing daughters of the lesser gentry, who were sent to her gynaeceum, however it's pronounced, to learn courtly etiquette. The use of needles was also...
Oh, sorry, they were sent to learn courtly. I thought she was killing them to learn courtly
No.
etiquette. No. It's not usually what you do in
And
court.
there were many witnesses who showed that they were horribly tortured and then just marked in buried in unmarked locations and things like that. But she did nothing wrong. And the example you gave was Irma Grisi, who the hyena of Auschwitz.
She used to rape the inmates and also picked out the most pretty female inmates to be gassed because she was jealous.
I can't believe you.
I'm not criticizing her. I don't want to be a misogynist. So,
God forbid Piers Morgan calls me a misogynist. But I mean, these are obviously.
if you think the hyena of Auschwitz is a bad woman, you're a misogynist, says Piers Morgan.
Well,
That's right, I'm a feminist.
Elizabeth Bathory was rumoured to have bathed in the blood of these young girls to keep her skin young.
That's great.
Yeah.
Women's empowerment. Women are vastly underrepresented in torturous murderers, so she's really breaking a glass ceiling that has kept women down from murdering children.
I mean, we're giving extreme examples of why Piers is an idiot, but Piers,
It's evident.
We're allowed to critique women based on their behaviour, right? You are not actually committed to being pro-woman in every circumstance. Women are capable of doing things wrong because they're actually human beings with agency. I can't believe I have to say this to Piers. And therefore, they can make moral judgments, making women moral agents in themselves, Piers. And I would actually contend hatred of women is actually reducing them below the status of moral agents. And it's not treating them as equals to not hold them to account for things they do wrong.
But I love how he's got so extreme. He's taking like the female version of the like ridiculous 4chan joke about everything being anti-Semitic.
Yes.
So you don't use kosher salt, it's pretty anti-Semitic.
Well, I mean, this is the most extreme feminist position.
Yeah.
If you oppose anything a woman does.
You don't believe the hyena of Auschwitz was stunning and brave, that's pretty
Exactly.
misogynistic.
And so
Andrew Tate's just sat there like, what? Why did I come here? I'm going back to Romania.
So Piers has completely fumbled his own position, as we'll see.
Not when I'm saying that women are beautiful and attractive at a certain age and saying the age
You're
is
saying
different.
18, 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25
Well, than ageist, perhaps, but misogynistic, absolutely
Is that
not.
really? But you just accepted it was misogyny.
No, I didn't. You said it was misogyny. I'm telling you, no, it's not.
If a 26-year-old woman is watching this and has heard those comments,
Yeah.
would you just say to her, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that?
No, I won't. I will say that I am sorry that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world.
That doesn't mean you're sorry.
No, I'm not sorry. That's the point I'm making. I'm sorry if that offends you. However, there's a large contingent of the world that believe that, and I was mediating for a conversation.
I love that Piers just can't get it. What do you mean you're not sorry? That doesn't mean you're not sorry. He's like, I know, I'm not. I know.
Again, with the research, the planning.
Yeah.
Like, of all the things you could have tried to, get on Andrew Tate, your researchers came up with, he said that 18-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
And you sat down, read all that, and went, I can get him on this.
Yeah.
And then you've got to the point where you're like, what do you mean you're not sorry? Expecting that he was going to say sorry.
Yeah.
So, no, you idiot.
No. Well, that basically means that Andrew Tate is a member of the Taliban. Let's watch.
Parts of the world that believe that about 26-year-old women are parts of the world where women are not allowed out on their own.
That's a
They
conversation.
have to wear full burqas.
Well, that's a conversation
They're not
to
allowed
have.
to drive cars.
That's nothing to do with
But
me.
is that the kind of world for women that you?
I was mediating
applaud?
a conversation.
No, I'm asking you what you think.
I don't live in a country where that happens.
You're using that as the excuse for why you're not sorry for
Exclusion.
saying it.
It's not an
Is that there are
excuse.
parts of the world where this is fine?
My
So
friend.
my question to you is, well, do you think it's fine?
I don't think it's fine. I live in a world where
You don't think it's fine?
the reason
This
I
isn't that hard, Andrew. You can simply say, Piers, you know what? With the benefit of hindsight, I wish I hadn't said it like that. And if a 26-year-old woman's watching, I'm sorry I said that, because that actually is blatantly misogynist. And even though that's a view held by other parts of the world,
questioning.
it's not a view I share. Now, I would respect you more if you said that than if you try and say, well, it's said in other parts of the world, so I'm not sorry.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Amazing.
Because, I mean, the argument that, as we've laid out, the argument of promiscuity, blah, 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 it's obvious as light and day. So let's say it might as well be, do you drink water, Andrew? And he's like, well, yeah. And it's like, well, you're basically a member of the Taliban then, because they also drink water. So why wouldn't you agree to this Taliban stuff? And he's
Well,
like, what?
It's actually
I don't live in a country where the Taliban rule things. What are you talking
It's
about?
actually even worse, because essentially what Piers Morgan is saying, look, if women can't be discount prostitutes, then
We need Sharia.
Yeah, then you want the most extreme form of Sharia, don't you? And Andrew Tate's just like something. No, No. I mean, there is a middle position where perhaps we don't live in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, and actually women take their own sort of personal sanctity a bit more seriously.
Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, not every woman has to wear a burqa. The law was passed, but most women just don't do it, and it's fine. The Zoomers just don't enforce the law.
But let's assume that they did.
Piers
and
Morgan
it
is
was-
actually more extreme than the Taliban.
But let's assume that they did, and it was how Piers is characterizing it. Like, there is a middle position between rampant promiscuity and the Taliban. Piers.
Piers doesn't see it.
Yeah, Piers just, I just can't fathom this. But one interesting thing.
Again, I'm sorry but it's just, imagine actually writing those questions and then thinking this is going to work. I'm sorry to keep lagging on it, but the sheer stupidity to think that you're going to get away with this. You've sat down with your team for presumably quite a few hours beforehand. We're going to fly this guy and pay for his trip, settle this up.
But remember, this is the best part of the interview that they could find. This is like an hour-long interview, I think. So,
The whole thing's even more stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we might do a follow-up when they release the full thing just to see how ridiculous it becomes. But what I love about this, right, is Tate said contingents of the world who believe this, right? This doesn't mean Islamic countries. Piers just instantly goes, "Oh, you mean Muslims?" I mean, they are part of that contingent.
I think
Piers.
more than just the Muslims understand that promiscuity is not a good thing for women.
Exactly. He's assuming that everyone in Britain is fine with women being massively promiscuous. There's no problem there. Obviously, these are British values. Women should have a double-digit body count by the time they're 20. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, all of China believes this, presumably.
Yeah, exactly. It's mental. It's like Piers. It's like this is a general conservative position that almost the entire world shares, including like probably more than half this country. But anyway, so the final no, this isn't actually the final one. There's another point that is worse, right? Because Piers is like, right, how can I stand on the dead body of a teenage girl to make Andrew Tate look bad? Now you think, hang on, Piers, how does that make Andrew Tate look bad? And Piers is like, just watch.
I think
That doesn't tell me what you think.
Then you need to understand why my content existed in the first place. My content existed because I tried my very hardest to be an absolute and utter realist, especially with uncomfortable truths. I was pointing out that very uncomfortable.
Is that a truth?
It's an uncomfortable truth in many parts of the world. It's not a truth that I'm happy about.
An inquest this week found that a 14-year-old girl, Molly Russell, died from an act of self-harm while suffering from depression and the negative effects of online content. The coroner said she was exposed to material that may have influenced her in a negative way, and in addition, what started as depression had become a much more serious depressive illness, and she very sadly took her life.
That's absolutely disgusting.
Right. Her
terrible.
father's campaign for better protections against potentially dangerous social media algorithms, right? It says that the particularly graphic content she saw romanticized acts of self-harm, normalized her condition, and focused on a limited and irrational view without any counterbalance of normality. First of all, what is your response to that? Nothing to do with you.
That's
That's
the first thing. Yeah, it is nothing to do with me. The fact that a 14-year-old
Why am I
girl took
here?
her life is truly sad. The world we live in today is... The fact that something like that happened is almost mind-blowing to me. That's truly sad. I actually feel sad inside to see something like that.
Got nothing to do with you. Then why you bring it up, Piers?
Because this is his tactic.
Yeah.
You may remember when he was on CNN, this is literally what Ben Shapiro called him out for.
I was going to say, you remember the Ben Shapiro thing?
Yeah, you will stand on the graves of the kids at Sandy Hook, and he kept saying it, and then Piers Morgan was like, how dare you say that I do that? Well, I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Well, you're literally doing it right
How
now.
dare you? Well, you keep saying that, but you do it. He's continued the tradition.
But that's the thing. Like I looked into the Molly Russell story, right? All it does is reinforce my position that teenagers shouldn't have access to the internet. Right? Have you got the link to the Guardian article there, right? So Molly Russell's family had given her a phone and then noticed a change in her behaviour in the last 12 months of her life.
She
right?
was watching Andrew Tate. Then Andrew Tate
Nothing to do with Andrew
came
Tate.
to her house.
This is in 2017, right?
Personally killed her.
Andrew Tate isn't even famous at this point, right? So she'd become more withdrawn and spent more time alone in her room, but she appeared to be normal when she was with the family. Of the 16,000 pieces of content saved, liked, or shared by Molly on Instagram, here we go, 2,000 were related to suicide, self-harm, and depression. She'd last used her iPhone to access Instagram on the day of her death. 2 minutes before, she'd saved an image on the platform that carried a depression-related slogan. Right, so teenage girl was given a phone, access to Instagram, spent all the time in the room, going down a rabbit hole of depression-related content, and eventually it caused her to commit suicide. Andrew Tate, what do you have to say about this?
I wasn't there.
I'm not involved in this in any way. Like, kids shouldn't be on the internet, maybe. Like, that's nothing. It's such a disgusting thing. Like, again, it just makes Andrew Tate look good because he comes out with, well, that's horrible.
Well, that's the thing. Andrew Tate has done nothing in this interview other than stand there and go, what?
I don't agree
Piers
with
Morgan
you.
is just digging a further grave.
Yeah, it's mental.
It's amazing how he's managed to out CNN himself as well. Because his show on CNN, at least there was some propriety to it. This is almost comedic. I mean,
It is comedic.
But the whole thing. I mean, like it's like if you were writing an Onion sketch about a terrible interviewer who would just make stuff up, and they'd bring up a dead kid that had no relevance to you. And be
Don't
like,
think
what?
women should be whores? Well, you're a misogynist.
Aren't you just a member of the Taliban? with the name of the show's host everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they're just in a self-obsessed lunatic
I bet we
world.
could find an Onion sketch that was done in like 2010 that would look a lot like this, actually.
Probably.
I bet we could. But the thing is with the Molly thing, she'd been binging on these self-harm videos and just, it was terrible. And so Andrew Tate basically ends like this. And honestly, again, if you're trying to make Andrew Tate look good and reasonable, well, good job, Piers. But I don't think that was the point. Let's watch.
What has come clear to me in the interview is that a lot of things you say you wouldn't say now that you've said before.
But I'd say them differently, perhaps.
Yeah, right. So to me, that's an acceptance, not just that you want to get back on platforms, because maybe that was one of the reasons you were no platform, but that you've recognized and understood the potential harm to the wrong kind of impressionable mind by some of the things you've said. Would that be fair?
I think that's 80% fair. I recognize and understand that with massive fame, you have to be more careful about being misconstrued. Like I said earlier, 1% of people misunderstanding you doesn't matter with a small audience. It matters with a very large audience. With power comes responsibility. I still believe the things I say. I do not want to be a negative force for the world. I also understand that I am a man who's lived a very difficult, nuanced life, and I am capable of making nuanced points that may be misunderstood by teenagers. However, that can be said about anybody and everything. Every opinion online can be misunderstood by children. Trying to protect children from the internet is a very interesting subject in and of itself, because I would argue that 80% of the content on the internet can be negative or detrimental to a young mind that doesn't understand the world.
That Piers Morgan showed by bringing up Molly Russell,
That had nothing to do with Andrew.
but reinforced the point that he made there. Nothing, like, again, Piers, it's so foot in mouth. I just can't get over it.
I did love the subtle shade there, though. It's like, well, it doesn't matter if 1% of your audience misunderstand you when you've got a small audience, but then when you get a large one, there might be some journos. And they're really special. So,
But yeah, so that's the clip that Piers Morgan's team decided was the best showing that they had with his chat with Andrew Tate. Again, I'm not an Andrew Tate fan. I've never really watched any of his content. I don't really know any of his opinions. So all I know is what Piers Morgan's showing me, and he doesn't seem like an unreasonable lunatic.
like Piers Morgan.
Like Piers Morgan, yeah.
Who's blown himself into the egosphere,
Yeah,
putting his name everywhere, and is now getting guests on so he can tell them, aren't you a member of the Taliban? And they just sort of look at him befuddled and go, what the
I just don't think
what are you
women
smoking?
should be really promiscuous, Piers.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this premium article on the terminal list and the conversion of James Reese, with an audio track for silver and gold tiers, of course. If you'd like to go and find out what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.